So
sure.
there's like I said, just from the outside looking in, it looks like there's kind of a divide. Like some people are obsessed with helicopters, and other people are obsessed with planes. Like, have you seen like the two groups a little more close up? Do you notice like, oh, this kind of personality really likes this kind of, this or that, or is it less
Uh,
that?
I think aviation is a very strong path. If you kind of get that bug, it's a lot like triathlon actually. You kind of if you get that bug, it's really hard to kind of let it go, no matter what, whether that's in fixed wing, whether that's in the rotary helicopter stuff. I think it's really hard to kind of get out of that, and I think it's whatever you kind of fall into first. I have most people are going to fall into flying, a plane because it is cheaper if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to learn, way cheaper. But if you happen to know someone that maybe takes you on a helicopter ride, they have their helicopter pilot's license and they go and take you out, and you might think that's the coolest thing ever. Maybe that's the path you go down to. Either way, they're both aviation, but it's just kind of a different side of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of common ground. I don't think there's any sort of rivalry, but there definitely is. And I haven't seen a whole lot of, I guess, no major difference in personalities. I've known helicopter pilots, and they're all tend to be kind of the same, cut from the same cloth, I guess.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
at least in my experience. I don't know. I also don't know a ton of helicopter pilots, so that's part of it too.
Well, you probably know more than I do, so that's why I ask. Because it's like in my head, I want to paint this like caricature of two different people. I'm always trying to figure out, how do people get down the paths that they get down? Like
Yeah,
how where I am versus where you are versus somebody. Like how do we even, aside from I'll say like the lottery of birth that puts
yeah,
us in different places,
yeah,
how do we each find our own way into these various places?
yeah. It's a really, and my path in particular has gone a couple different directions that I did, especially recently, having gone into the finance side. Um, just completely different path than where I thought it would go. And so I don't know if it's a personality thing. I think a lot of it is uh, a means to an end for me
Mhm.
in terms of I do enjoy, obviously, I'm not a big math guy, but in fact, I've never really ever enjoyed math. And not that there's a ton of math involved in my job, but I work with numbers all day
Yeah.
now. And I'd never, in 10 years ago, I never would have considered a career in finance. Like that was probably one of the last places I expected myself to be. And then just found my way into this, and turns out I actually kind of enjoy it. And it's not fun per se, but it's rewarding in its own unique way. And then to have the coaching side where I do like really working with people and mentoring particularly like the college age group, the 18 to like 21-year-old age group. I
Mhm.
really found like working with that group. They're old enough. I haven't worked with a lot of juniors, so I don't have a lot of experience in that. But they're at that point, especially in a collegiate club team, they're there because they want to be there.
Mhm.
They're not just, they're not forced to be there. A lot of times, and I've been told this by, and my friend who coaches swimmers in particular will come to a university on a scholarship and they get very burnt out. They're already
Yeah.
burnt out on swimming from high school, and
Yeah.
they get to college and they realize that they don't necessarily have that passion that they used to, and they might even be in a full ride scholarship and they'll quit the team just because they just can't do it anymore. They don't like it.
Mhm.
Um, and but everybody that joins the team at SDSU wants to be there.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they didn't want to be there, they're not going to be there. There's no incentive for them to be there. In fact, they're paying, to get this because we don't offer any scholarships. They're paying for everything out of their own pocket. We get discounts, but by and large, they have to want to do it. They have to be willing to pay and put in the time and put in the effort to come to practice and to train hard and race hard. And that I like that's kind of athlete that I really like.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of juniors in particular, sometimes their folks are triathletes. So they kind of just fell into like, oh, I guess I'll be a triathlete. And then they get to be 16, 17. And there's not a whole lot of NCAA development yet, but I'm interested to see how that's going to go
Yeah.
with athletes that were triathletes from when they were kids, because that's such a rarity nowadays.
Yeah.
Hopefully that becomes less and less of a rarity, but that'll be interesting how that transitions. But I really enjoyed working with the that group, and the club group is nice because you don't have that pressure of high performance and really achieving, um, I guess, earning your keep for the school because you're giving out scholarships. You
Right.
kind of have less of that pressure. And so you have a lot of freedom to create to kind of trend the program in the direction that you want it to be. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that with coaching in particular, it's been great to have that group of consistent young athletes that I can mentor and help achieve their goals, whether that's, competing in the first triathlon, which a lot of them do on the
Hmm.
team, or that's maybe they want to go top 10 at nationals, and I can help them do that too. So having a wide array of athletes in that age group, from that are beginners to, borderline elites, um, being able to train those and everything in between, being able to train all of that in one setting is really awesome.
So I want to ask you a little bit of a kind of esoteric question. And I like to talk to coaches about this because I mean you see it firsthand, and you, I mean you have a a large impact on the athletes that you kind of have under your care. But I'm wondering if you have an idea or thought about what the purpose of sport is.
It's a good question. I think for me, sport is it's kind of it's almost primal if you put it that way, put it in a way. It's very um, and competition in general. It's competition, but it's also, and particularly with like in anything like endurance sports where it's like a race. It's very I for me when I started triathlon, what really appealed to me was the racing and the competition side, and that still is what drives me today. Is I like obviously seeing my times get faster is cool, but I really liked being able to basically go and beat other people at something where it's a measured. We're all fighting the same in triathlon and endurance sports in general. Everyone's going the same distance,
Hmm.
but who can do it the best? And so it was kind of almost like a, I guess, yeah, like I said, a very primal thing of like I want to be the best at this, and here's everyone gets the same course, and you all have to go do it, but I want to be the first to the other end. And so having that kind of, I don't know if it's an instinct thing, and I think some people are very much in tune with that, and others aren't so much.
Hmm.
I know plenty of people that, even in the sport triathlon, that are not in any way competitive, and they do it because they enjoy training and they enjoy the social aspect and the lifestyle. But I've always particularly enjoyed that competition, and so with sport, it's been really about proving. I don't know if it's proving yourself against everybody else, or a lot of times you go back and forth between that and proving something to yourself that you worked hard, you earned this, and now go prove it against the other people who also worked hard.
Hmm.
So that's kind of, I guess, it's kind of hard to a roundabout way to answer that question. Um, but I think it comes back to that need to be the best. That's what it is for me, at least.
Okay.
I'm sure, and I think that definition obviously varies vastly from people, that something that's fun versus something that I want to be the best.
Yeah. I just didn't know if if you see variations. So like say you're gonna call them kids, but they're not really kids. The
Yeah,
kids that like they're not they're not elite. They're not ever going to be anywhere near that, but they're still out there just like working their butt off. Like, is there a different, do you see a different motivation for them? Like what is there, are we
definitely.
like learning life lessons? Are we just getting in shape? Or we, like what are we even out here doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think you learn a lot, especially when you learn a lot about yourself. And triathlon in particular is very, because it is so physically and mentally demanding. I'm not even just with racing, but with the training, especially like I said earlier, with kids having to balance their school life around the sport. Um, that plays such a big role in just like making sure that your priorities are straight, and making sure that everything you're doing the best you can in the moment and whatever it is. And some people have the motivation that they just maybe they want to better themselves, and it's very internal, and they don't care if they're last place. They just want to go and finish that race. And I've had athletes that are like that. They want to do, they're 18 years old, and by the time they graduate, they want to do an Ironman. I've had several athletes that want to do that at some point, and they, that's like, okay, we're going to do sprints one year, the Olympics the next year, half Ironman, and then the Ironman their senior year or something. And that's 100% internal. They don't want to go, and they don't really care about being competitive. They just want to go and finish that. And so if they can go and finish that and cross that off their list, I've done my job as a coach. Even though maybe I thought that they should focus on this or that, because that's kind of my own personal goals for the team. But if they want to do this, I'm going to help them along the way any way I can. So I think there's so many different motivations for people, and athletes in particular. They're just, especially with mass participation sports, because there's not a huge, and I'm fortunate that I have a team environment to work with. A lot of like my own private kind of practice coaching with athletes that are in their mid 30s, late 40s, and up. They tend to be a lot more intrinsically motivated versus I'm going to do this because my friend's doing it. I'm going to do this because, and maybe their motivations change, but a lot of times the older athletes are very much, I want to go and finish an Ironman. I want to go and maybe get this PR, or maybe I want to race this race. I want to do Alcatraz, or I want to go to 70.3 Worlds, or whatever it is, or maybe I even want to go pro. But they're a lot more intrinsically motivated versus my younger athletes can get a lot more external motivation from teammates and from just being around a lot more athletes that are similar to yourself. Yeah. So there's a lot of,
it's kind of interesting to see the progression from like younger athletes to older athletes and the people that stay with it. I mean, I recently saw a lot of my college teammates and my college coaches, and I almost felt bad, like I was doing something wrong. It was just this weird experience where so many people kept being like, "Oh, do you still do triathlon? Like when you can get to it?" And I just want to be like, "No, like I'm still training more hours than I was in college, and I'm still trying to be better than I was, and like I'm still after it here 8 years after graduation." Whereas a lot of them are kind of settling into life and having kids and getting married and just kind of compartmentalizing things down. So yeah, I still like it's definitely interesting to see who makes that transition, why, and like where does that post college career basically stop for so many people.
Yeah, in triathlon in particular, I've seen that, and that I've had. It's interesting actually. I should do a follow up one of these days and just go back to a lot of prior athletes and kind of just see where they're at and maybe how they benefit from the team, how triathlon has benefited their life. I would say of the ones that I know, I'd say only about half of them ever do a triathlon after college. But the ones that do, I think almost every single one of the athletes on my team that has done triathlon in college, even if they don't do it seriously in terms of they're never going to train 10 to 15 hours a week again and ever for anything. Almost every single one of them will still do some sort of races, whether that's a 5K on the 4th of July, whether that's going and maybe you're trying to run a marathon in 5 years or trying to go, by the time they're in their 30s, they want to do an Ironman again. As long as they came out of that program and they developed some sort of a love for the sport and some in being active and being healthy, that's also a big benefit that I feel like having done my job as a coach for that 4 years, that's something, if nothing else, they still have that wanting to lead a healthy lifestyle. That's a part of it too. But yeah, I'd be really interested to go back and see what a lot of these athletes are up to nowadays in terms of sport. Because a lot of them do, post grad, they don't really do much of it anymore. And just by nature of having now working, 40 to 55 hours a week, having a full-time job, it gets really, really hard to continue to really want to do this on limited time, especially when you have a family. Sure, I give the utmost respect for guys that are working crazy hours and are still trying to go to like 70.3 Worlds or go to Kona on 10 to 12 hours of training. Utmost respect for those guys, those age groupers, because they're not, unlike the pros, they're fitting in training just like my student athletes. They're fitting in training on top of everything else in their life, family life and work life, all in one, where the pros don't have it easy in that way, but all they have to focus on is training.
Their only mental focus is training. Yeah. If you do a follow-up with your athletes and kind of figure out with the people that are doing it and like why they're doing it, I'd love to like collect that stuff and maybe like put it up on the website or something, like do like a little article with blurbs from everybody. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that's something that I haven't done because I've only been coaching the team for about 4 years. So I've just this last year
gotten the full cycle through.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really interested to see there only a few of them. Our retention for athletes tends to be pretty good, but a lot of times we'll start off in terms of recruiting. We'll start off with maybe 35, 40 people signing up for the team in the fall. And then by the time the fall's over, we have maybe 20, 25. Mm-hmm. And then of those 20 to 25, it gets whittled down to probably 10 to 20 like core members. And people come in and out throughout the spring. But those usually 10 to 12 that actually are going to stay the next year tend to go all 4 years in my experience. Okay. So it'll be interesting now that I have a full cycle. I can kind of see. I'll ask the people that I started coaching as freshmen who just graduated at the end of in May what they're going to be doing, what their plans are. And as far as I know, there's a lot of them are still training for something. Yeah. I don't know what, but most of them are usually, a lot of times I get a lot of ex-runners, and so they always go back into running as they do.
There's always the temptation. I'm probably a better triathlete than I was a runner, but like there's still the temptation of like, maybe I can go back and try to have a new PR 5K or something, like, because I was like, I loved running the 5K. I'm like, do I really want to do that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole commitment into to distance and to that kind of training, and I had to tell myself, and I have to do it now even, that I'm never gonna be as fast. Like, there's no way I'm gonna be as fast as I was when I was training basically full time, and I have to let that dream go that I'm gonna be able to run, under 16 minutes off the bike. Like, I'm not gonna be able to probably ever do that, unless I start really, really training hard again. And so, with that, following up with athletes will definitely be something that I look into. That's a really good idea. I should do that. So,
definitely getting those life perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that'd be valuable.
We're running a little out of time here, so I'll ask you the question I ask everybody. If you could only choose one food for recovery to eat for the rest of your life, what do you choose?
One food for recovery. After every race, what was that?
I was gonna say I'm hoping for some like pro secrets here, like you guys eat a weird fruit you can only find on an island.
So I've always after races I always crave like a big protein shake, like just like with a bunch of bananas and like protein powder and stuff. But that was what I used to crave, and now as of lately, I've really, really wanted like a big fat hamburger, like a cheeseburger, right after a race.
Okay.
So that'll be like it's not like I don't usually give into that temptation, but I really enjoy like a big like juicy cheeseburger or something, or some sort of like really greasy breakfast food after like a race. And the nice thing about racing sprints is that you can race them so often that it basically becomes a really hard workout followed by brunch for me. So something related to breakfast food, or a big fat cheeseburger. That was what I wanted after all of my half Ironmans. It was a cheeseburger. So
I
it's
feel
definitely
like at
not
that point
obviously a
it's well
healthy.
deserved, so it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't feel I haven't given to that temptation a whole lot for the sprints, but I definitely did for the half Ironmans.
Zach, if people want to follow you, kind of see what you're up to, where can they find you?
So I'm not incredibly active a lot anymore. I do post stories on my Instagram, and it's at Zackletic, Zackletic, like athletic, but with a Zach.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have a website, sbmultisport.org is my private coaching. If you're interested in like client one-on-one client coaching, I do remote coaching, and I have athletes here in San Diego that I coach as well. And also, if you're in San Diego and you're looking to, and you're between the ages of say 16 and 18, and you're thinking about going to somewhere for school, I'd love to talk with you about going to San Diego State University for the tri team. I can't give you any scholarships, but I would love to talk with you
Yeah,
about getting a triathlon.
that sounds good. Thanks for coming on today and sharing your time with us.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be here.